Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, November 15th, 2024. Know your enemy and know yourself. This statement comes from Sun Tzu's influential work, The Art of War, which was written around the 5th century BC. The full quote, as it appears in most English translations, is, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." This quote emphasizes the importance of understanding one's adversary in order to achieve success in any conflict or competition. While originally written in the context of military strategy, the wisdom of this quote has been applied to various fields, including business, politics, cybersecurity, and real tax reform, the FAIRtax. Now, we must accept that we are going into a war. Now, we're not advocating for a simple reduction in tax rates. We seek the most fundamental shift of power from D.C. to the people, the FAIRtax, and that's a shift the political ruling class is not going to accept without a fight. Now, certainly we can be excited over a president who has the courage and the desire to eliminate the federal income tax. President Trump gives us the best chance we've ever had to pass the FAIRtax, and we may not get another chance like this in our lifetimes. However, it will be a fatal mistake if we let that excitement blind us to the real enemies of this reform. If we're to succeed, we must know our adversaries and understand how they think. That's the only way to ensure that our grassroots movement can make such a fundamental and important change happen. First, we must understand that our adversaries are not a monolithic group. We have a number of different adversaries, and they all have different desires and objectives. That means that a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work. We must approach each group in a way that addresses each one's particular concerns about the FAIRtax if we're going to be successful. Now, here's some of the groups who will most likely oppose President Trump's effort to eliminate the income tax. Some will operate overtly and some more covertly. All the income tax lobbying groups. Industry groups like the National Association of Realtors, whose primary purpose is protecting special tax benefits for their members. Many of the elites who believe that only they are smart enough to decide what's best for the rest of us. There are nonprofits whose primary purpose is to discuss and write papers on the income tax. There's federal government employees whose job depends on having the income tax. Along with many tax professionals, many members of Congress in both parties who have raised large amounts of money selling tax favors to lobbyists, many congressional staff who work on income tax-related committees, and finally the IRS and the Treasury staff who also work on income tax policy. Now, it's important that we not doom our efforts by looking upon our adversaries as evil people. Like most of us, most of our adversaries have families. Like us, they're focused on feeding and educating their children. Like us, they want to maintain their financial stability and save for retirement. Most of the people in these groups are not concerned with broad policy impacts. They're just simply legitimately concerned about how their families will be impacted if the income tax is eliminated. Now, of course, there are some who are only concerned with the power they'll lose if the income tax is repealed, and to these, I think we show no mercy. We need to expose them to the ridicule that they deserve. In conclusion, how do we address the opposition groups that are worried about how they're going to survive if they're suddenly out of a job? Well, one thing that we can do is support a plan under which displaced government workers receive either a generous early retirement option or a generous severance package that will allow them to provide for their families while they find other work. Now, one of our biggest problems is that time is on our opponent's side. They don't have to convince the American people that the income tax is a better system than the FAIRtax. They just have to delay things until the next election. Now, President Trump will have only 4 years in office, and he's only guaranteed 2 years of his party controlling both houses of Congress. Now, historically, major reforms like we're advocating for usually get done in a president's first 2 years and only when his party also controls Congress. The party in power historically loses ground in midterm elections, and should the Democrats take either house of Congress in the 2026 midterms, our opportunity to pass the fair tax is all but gone. Now, President Trump understands that the fair tax is consistent with what he wants to do. The fair tax frees the American people from the chains of the elites. It rewards hard work and savings. It doesn't tax Social Security payments, and it protects the future solvency of Social Security and Medicare. The fair tax fulfills his promise of no tax on tips or overtime pay. The prebate ensures that the fair tax is progressive. It won't hurt lower-income taxpayers, and the rich will pay their fair share. The fair tax makes U.S.-made products and exports more competitive. It allows prices to be reduced by eliminating hidden taxes, and the fair tax clearly shows the cost of government to every consumer in the United States on every retail receipt. Now, this is our chance, and it's a chance that might not come again in our lifetimes. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. Now, this will take the diligent efforts of all of us. Now, we need your financial assistance, and we need your grassroots assistance. Please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. If your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.